Tesla Hobo here. Thanks for watching the Tesla Hobo channel. Today we are working on the 2002 Firebird Trans Am, and we're modernizing it a little bit, and we are adding what I like to call the Terminator lights. So we are putting, we already have them installed on this side, LED headlights, dual LED headlights for both the low beam and the high beam, as well as we're putting in halo fog lights. I have the headlights in and completed on this side. I have the fog light partially in. I don't have the halo light installed yet because these fog lights have daytime running lamps that are halos. But I'll open it up and I'll show you what we're doing here. So as you can see here, the original light, only the outside one is lit when it's the low beam, and then I'll flick it over to the high beam. And then it's only the high beam that's, or it's actually, and then both of them, this high beam only lights up when the high beams are on. So we changed that up a little bit. We have now gone to an LED projector light, where the little red Terminator glow and this white line underneath are the daytime running lamps. And these lights here on the outside are the low beams. And then, as you saw when the video was just on, this red light then gets also a very bright white high beam when the high beams are on. Going to LEDs gives you much better visibility on this car and on a lot of cars. And then also having two low beams on each side instead of just one on each side, and then a total of 4 when you have your high beams on. It is much, much brighter in this setup. Now the problem with this car specifically is this is a 2002 Trans Am, as I said. The standard headlights are a little bit smaller than the aftermarket headlights. There's very few companies that sell the 3.5 by 5.5 stock size bulbs, but there's a plethora of companies that sell the 4x6s. So we did a little bit of adapting, a little bit of drilling. We'll show you what we did along the way. You can, if you don't want to do all the crazy drilling and all that stuff, you can buy a kit that I believe is around $200 to $300 that you can put LEDs or HIDs in the car. But they're just going to be basic white lenses that just have the basic bulb that you put in it. And unless you adapt the bulb afterwards, it will be the same thing where just the low beam on the outside lights up and then the low beam and the high beam light up at the same time. But you can't get any of these crazy cool things. This is just one style that I got. The full kit for all 4 was $90. The fog lights here were $40 for the 2. So I was ready to do the adaptation. I'd rather have a really cool light, and I'm willing to get, obviously as you see, I'm willing to get a little dirty to make sure that it happens. So we're going to start with the fog lights. Later on, if you really just want to see the headlights and you don't care about the fog lights, I'm going to put a timestamp right here, and this is going to be the time that you could skip to if you just want to watch the headlights. But for now, we're going to start with the fog lights. So the fog lights, as I said, I already did one side. I did start the video. I did this at night, so I'm gonna clip to it, and you're gonna see how we start to get the fog light out. There's 3 bolts here, and then there's 4 bolts over on this side of the car that you get to pull out. What I'm gonna show you now is the afterwards. So to nighttime you go. All right, so here you go. Once we're underneath the car here, 10 millimeter, we're going to take out this bolt, this bolt, this bolt, and that one. And then up here in the air dam area, I already have the plugs pulled out, as you could see. But you pull the center plugs of these out, and then you yank these 3 out. And now once you have that off, you can work under here and you will see that you've got the fog lights, one on one side and then one on the other up here. As you can see, like I do with most of my videos, this left one here has already been upgraded to, or that's the in place, is the LED. And on this side, we have the incandescent one in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take out these two plastic pins. Now, if you're just trying to replace the fog light bulb, be careful with these. What we're doing, we're actually going to be ignoring these and putting something else in place, so we're just going to rip those out. So what you do is you push this center pin in, and then once you pull that center pin in, you should be able to pull the whole thing out. It's really difficult to get a setup up here where you can see it, so I'm going to stop the video and then I'll start it back up once it's out. Alright, now that we have those two plastic pins on the bottom out, now we need to get this screw out that's right here. It's a Phillips head. So you unscrew this and there's a spring. Now that that's unscrewed, you stick your hand in from underneath. And there we go. So you pull that out, and then from underneath, you'll see the plug here, and we want to, well, there's the spring that I was talking about, and then we want to pull this plug off of the light bulb. And there we go. We got the fog light out. Now for what we're gonna do here, if you were just replacing the fog light bulb, you just twist this and the bulb comes out. There, voila. Now if you're like us and you're going to be replacing the fog lights with the LED lights, we now have to go back under the car with a 10mm, and we will have to remove the bracket for the fog light, because we have to adapt this bracket to get the fog light in. So, as you see here now, these two 10mm need to come out. There we go. Cut this piece off right here. And we cut this piece out, and then we cut out this little corner here and this little corner here, and we'll do that now to the last side. Alright, so the fun of the movie magic, you watched a couple minutes of us taking apart this fog light from the bottom, taking the screws out, taking the pins out. So now you got the bulb out. So you can take the bulb out. So you undo the clip. When it came out, you've got the mounting clip on it. We're going to have to cut up that mounting clip. Once we cut up that mounting clip, then we're going to have to put the LEDs in and modify it to that. So we're going to need some bolts and some washers. So let me grab those. And I'll take this as a good time to point out, I'm just swapping one extension cord for both tools. But if you were ever working on your headlights or working on your car, always hook up a trickle charger or a battery maintainer or even a full-size battery charger, because you don't want your battery dying while you're doing all this work. For now, too, I am going to turn off the headlights. So here we go. Now, as you see, the stock bulb fits in just like this. Width-wise, it's perfect, obviously, because it's made from the factory that way. Depending on what fog lights you buy, it's going to be different. The ones that I bought, specifically, they do have the mount in the same spot, but it's a lot closer in. So we have nylon spacers that we're going to put in there. These fog lights come with specific sized holes in the back that will actually hold the nut in place, so you don't have to put a wrench behind there. So pretty much we're going to put we have a Teflon filled nut, Teflon spacer, and then a hex bolt that we're going to go through the side, and then we're going to be good. So this is what I'm going to get to right now. I will put this in here. So you put the Teflon nut in there, you spin it until it rests in place. It's a lot easier if you take the hex nut, put it through the plate, then put the washer on, then put the nut back. This is a little fun thing, where it's almost like if you only had another hand sometimes, it would be so much easier. Alright, so what we're doing is I'm only doing one side. I'm doing it really loose because I want to show you guys here that the spacers, I can only find specific size spacers at Lowe's. And this is the small size they had. Now if you see, I can't fit that in there because it's too thick. So what I'm going to do on my application is I'm going to take these ears or tabs and I'm going to bend them out a little bit so that I could slide this in there, and then when I tighten it, it'll close it back up. You may not have to do that. I don't know what size washers are sold where you are, and also I just don't know what fog lights you want. So, but for me, I'll show you how you could do this pretty easily if you can't find washers that are the correct size. So it's pretty easy. These brackets are not the strongest of metal. You just take it and you bend it. And you take it and you bend it. Now what you want to do is you want to bend both sides because you still want the fog light to be centered in the hole. If you bend just one side, it's going to be a little off center. So we go in here, we got them bent. Now we're going to do what we did before, put that all back together. Now still though, when you put the first one in, you don't want to fully tighten it. You still want it loose. So that if you need to wiggle it around or wobble it, you can. And then we're going to tighten each side independently as we go to make sure that we bend each of the tabs back equally so that we still have the fog light centered. Now as you see, try to zoom in here, you'll see that it's pulling the nut in as you go. And we're pretty even. We're lining up this line with the fog light. Now still too, don't fully tighten this because these nuts are also what adjust the vertical height of the fog light. So don't completely tighten it. We got to put it in and then we're going to have to adjust the height. We'll come back to the video and you'll see it's nighttime again because I'll be showing you how to, you can't really adjust it that well in the daylight. It's best to either do it at night or do it in an area where you could shut off a lot of the natural sunlight so you can see the brightness of the lights and how they go. Now at this point you want to be careful now to not scratch your paint. And I'm going to show you too. So on our light, I'm going to have to reverse the polarity, which is the positive and the negative wires, because when I plug it in, if I plug it in the normal way, where this clip right here locks into the clip for the light, which is here. So this is what the same connector that's on the car. If I put it that way, it does not work. It only works backwards like this. So I'm going to show you really quick. Now, with whatever light that you buy, try plugging it in first the normal way. If it doesn't work, spin the connector over. If you could put it in that way, give it a shot, and then hopefully it will work. But if it doesn't, this is a very easy process to take apart a connector if you've never done it before. So in here in this connector, there are two metal pins. And what holds it in is a little, so the pins are here, and inside each prong there's a little plastic tab. So if you stick something pointy, I'm using this soldering iron, you could use a pick tool or a tiny screwdriver. If you put the tool in there and pull the plastic just a little bit to the side, you could pull the wire out. And there you go. Pretty simple. So now we're looking at it. The red for me was originally on the left side with the prong facing me. Now I'm going to remember it pneumatically. Red will now go on the right if I'm looking at the prong. So now I take the black one out. So now I'm going to put it back in. You pull the little rubber grommet back. You slide it, so we got the prong towards us, red one on the right, and you will snap it and hear it snap in, and you're good to go. And when you put these in normally, there's only one way that you could put it in, so it shouldn't be that difficult to put it back together, as long as you now just put the polarity to the proper polarity. And now you'll see, so I'm going to turn the fog lights on. So we got that one in. And voila, the polarity is proper now. Alright, so that was just making sure there that we got the lights wired properly, that everything's good. So now, if you have just regular fog lights, or, so if you just have regular fog lights, you're good at this point. This is where you will put the fog light back in, and if that's the case, I'm going to put a timestamp right here. You could skip to that. What we're going to do now, our fog lights are a little bit above that. They have a halo light around it that acts as a driving light, so we have a third cable. So if you want your fog lights to be on whenever the ignition is on, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take a wire from the car that is an ignition wire, and you could do it one of two ways. I'm going to most likely run it off of the cigarette lighter. That's normally where I run a lot of the extra LED lights that I'm going to run, because if the cigarette lighter goes out, oh no, it's just the cigarette lighter. You don't really want to tie into any of the other ignition sources unless you're going to use a relay. So if you just tie into the cigarette lighter, which is what I'm going to do, we're just going to trace a wire from the inside of the car. We're going to trace it out. We're going to tie it into this, and then we're going to also run it to the other side and tie it to that side. That's if you want the halo to be controlled separately. What you could also do, which is the true right way to do it, is you could actually find any ignition wire, and you take that ignition wire and you buy a relay switch that you could buy for $10 to $15 online, and you would power that ignition switch to the relay, and then you will run a negative and a positive directly from the battery or any other part of the car that is that with like a fused line of something that's not an important line, and then you would have a wire coming out that runs to this. Now what a relay does is the relay will use the ignition wire just as an on-off. It's not actually pulling power from the ignition wire, it's just reading the signal from the ignition wire, and when it feels that there's power going through it, it will allow the power from your other positive that you've run separately, specifically for the fog lights, it will allow that power to connect and go to the fog lights, and then when it senses the ignition no longer has power, it's then going to kill power without actually draining power from the ignition line, because the last thing you want to do is blow your important ignition line with a fog light, because your ignition is very important for your car, because you can't run if your ignition fuse pops. And a lot of the things that are tied to the ignition are also normally important systems. So, and then the third option is also something that I'm not going to do this, but I will just explain what to do. So the other option is that you only want the halos to turn on when the fog light turns on. And if that's the case, it's just a simple matter of cutting these two wires back, the red and the yellow, splicing the wires together so that the yellow and the red both go to this red wire, and the red wire goes to the prong. And then whenever the fog light switch is turned on, the halo turns on with it, and you could move forward to the timestamp that I previously put about the next step. So we're going to get to the wiring, and we will go from there. Alright, so here we go. I want my fog light halo rings to be connected to the factory daytime running lamps. So I am going to wire them into there. So to do that, there are two more. You can do it one of two ways. So this is the panel that lays like this underneath the car. So you got to take all of these off anyway. This 1, 2, 3, 4 to work on the fog lights. So you can just take off these 2 and these 3 here and take the whole panel out, or you could just unscrew these 2 and there's a window to get in there to access the screw that's under there. So I personally just took the whole thing off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in there. I'm going to remove this all together. So there is a bolt in the back to unscrew this. So I'm going to take that out and you just twist the light socket off. So I'm going to show you guys. So here you go. As you see, I already have the socket off. Pretty much it's here. You press this in and you twist it to get it out. And if yours is anything like mine, it's leaked before. This connector's all corroded and destroyed. And then you'll see up here, you got here and here are the 2 bolts to take the whole thing out. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take the whole thing out, and then if I could fit my tool in there today, I'm gonna cut the whole back of this off so that it's just an open vent. If not, I'll do that at a later time, but it's just a matter of just cutting this plastic off after the fact. So what we gotta do though for the daytime running lamps is we gotta splice into these wires. So we got to cut them out. My connector is destroyed, as I showed you. They're destroyed on both sides. So I'm actually just going to snip all of the wires. I'm going to use the one wire, because these wires are, the black is the ground, and then the brown and the blue. One is for the turn signal, and one is for the factory daytime running lamps. So I'm just going to tie into the factory daytime running lamps. If you wanted to do the turn signals, you do the other one. So later on, I'm actually going to test it, and I'll say which of those wires is which, the brown or the blue. So I'm just going to go in here, I'm going to snip both of these, and we'll set the video back up. All right, so here we go. We're under the car. These are the cables. As I said, black is the negative, and then the blue and the brown are each the supply lines. So what we got here is we got a multimeter. If you don't have a multimeter, you could do this just by testing things that are, you could turn the parking lights on, and you could just wire up the fog light directly until the halo turns on. So as you see, what I'm doing here is I am taking the negative of my multimeter, I am grounding it to the sway bar, and then I'm putting the positive first onto the brown one, and it's showing 11.6, so that's powered right now. And the blue one is not, it has very minor power. So that is with the parking lights on. All right, so here we go. We are going to wire it to the brown, because that is the parking lights, which is also the dedicated daytime running lamps. We don't want it as a turn signal. So first we are actually going to cover up the rest of the wires. Some people like snipping the tips of wires off. Some people like putting them in wire nuts. I'm fine with just electrical taping them as long as you electrical tape everything after the fact. So I'm gonna do all this. So twist the brown to this wire that we have. It's around 2 or 3 feet long. We have it's long enough to get from this area over to the fog light hole. And there we go, we'll tape this. And then for the last run around, we will tape it to the rest. And then we'll slide the corrugated wire protector back over everything so we have a nice clean look. If we could even fit it with the bulge here. There we go. Look at that. Perfect. Right to the end. We're going to take this wire, run it up through here, and then put it up through the fog light hole. And then I'll come back with the video from the other side. Alright, and voila, there you go. The halos are up, they are on. That is what it looks like with the halos. That is what it looks like with the halos and the fog lights. And now what we will have to do is we will have to adjust the fog lights, but as I said earlier, we're going to do that at night. That is simply just a matter of going at night. Once the car is there, and this is where it gets a little tricky, so it's then a little tedious as well. So you got to put the car down, which makes it pretty difficult to access the fog lights back there. But first you put the two 10mm bolts on each side, and then you put the car down. You go 20-30 feet away from somewhere, and the wall that's ideally white or something like that on flat ground. You turn the fog lights on, and then you measure how high the fog lights are off the ground. And you just make sure that the line that you see on the wall is the same height. If it's not, you just got to kind of push some force onto the light bulbs and go up or down, whatever you need to make sure that it's properly level. And then after that, then you got to carefully undo the 10mm bolts, carefully pull the fog light forward, and then we got to retighten these side mounting bolts that go left and right here, and we got to tighten them so that the fog lights won't move or bounce ever when you go over speed bumps. So we'll get back to it and we'll show you some of the lights at night, and we're good. And if you want to keep continuing on, this is where we will now go into showing you the custom installation to do the Terminator style headlights so that everything looks like this. All we got left now is these light bulbs, and then we are good to go. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, subscribe. If you still want to see how to do the headlights, keep watching on, and we'll see how to do that. Alright, so here we go, part 2 of the fog light headlight install. We are going to start knocking out the headlights to put in what I call the Terminator LED headlights. So on a Trans Am or even a Firebird, if you lift the headlights and put them all the way to headlight, you should know this. You put them all the way to headlight and then click them back to park, the middle section, the lights will stay up, but the lights will be off without getting electric. So I will go do that right now. I'll be back. In case you didn't notice, that's my horrible Arnold impersonation. Alright, so to start, we got to take out the plastic surround here. So we are going to need a Phillips screwdriver, where in my case, I will be using a Phillips impact driver. Specifically, for those of you who know the difference, it's a Phillips 2-bit. And now, we need to get a Torx bit to get Alright, so now we need to get the Torx bit to get the surrounds of the headlights out. I actually don't know what size Torx these are because my bits are so rusted. I can't see the numbers anymore, but it is probably a T15, I would assume. So you just pull the plug out the back, pull the spring off. If you're doing the LED conversion to the 4x6, you don't need any of this stuff really anymore, but still just put it all off to the side. Also too, if these adjustment screws are stripped on the inside, you could also use the outside. You could use a female Torx. I believe it's an E7, no, an E8 female Torx. Alright, so now as I was saying, some of you are going to just be replacing the headlights or replacing the headlights with standard LED halogen blank housings that are reusable, because these right now, if you unscrew these four, this whole bulb normally just gets replaced with a completely new enclosed bulb like you would in a house. You don't replace just the filament, you replace the whole bulb. So if that's the case, you remove these four, you put your new light bulb in. If you got one that's an HID or an LED conversion, you then put your light bulb in here and you twist it into place. You plug it in, you put it all back, and then you tighten these screws here. If actually, come to think of it, if you're just replacing the housing, you don't even need to take these screws off. You would just take these 4 out, put the new light bulb in, and then mount these 4 back onto it. You only need to take these off if you're doing an HID or an LED conversion, or if you're replacing it all together, because you need to adapt to the back of this. Depending on what light bulb you have with an HID, or you should have to just probably cut these knobs off, and then you can put the bulb in there. But once again, that's not what I'm doing, so I don't need any of that stuff. So what we got to do, we got to go further. We have to take the top metal plate off of the housing up here. We have to take this off because we're going to need to get access to the back, because we've got some cutting and some drilling and some zip tying we got to do to get everything to work. So to get the top piece, actually, you know what? I don't even think yeah, I will. So to take the top piece off, Phillips 2 in the front. Phillips 2 on the side. Put the headlights down. Oh, and that's me stepping on the broken driving lamp that I removed earlier. Alright, so you got the 4 screws out, and voila, you got the plate off. Put that somewhere soft where it's not going to fall, because obviously it's a painted surface. So now we got to go a step further. We also have to take the top adjustment plate off. So this is the plate that you take on and off. There's 3 screws, 1, 2, 3. They're back to the torque screws again. And these are the screws that you would normally use to adjust the angle that your headlights are, if they're off or if they're touching the paint anywhere. So you're going to have to make sure when you put everything back together that you readjust everything. I've tried in the past marking them, but because there's so many levels of adjustment here, it doesn't work whenever you put them back. They're still off and have to be completely readjusted anyway. Now put them back up and then turn the headlights off. And then here we go. Here are the lights that I bought. They have an H4 adapter. It is slightly different than what's in the car. This car apparently has had work done in the past. They've already had to replace the connectors for the low beam light. The high beam light we're going to have to cut off at some point to make sure that it fits onto here. But so right now we'll just take these wires out, pull them back, put them over here. So we got our space in our room to put the headlights in. So the first headlight is, first one to put in is the high beam. Because the high beam you can put straight in without having to cut the top plate. Once we put this one in, we could then go to the rear light. So there's this plug right here on my light at least. Actually fits perfectly in this slot here. So that's what I went on for my alignment point. And then what I chose to do is we are going to take a drill bit, not drill into here because that has to stay waterproof. I'm going to drill into these cooling fins. So I'm going to drill a hole through the cooling fins so that I could use zip ties, and then I'll drill into the housing as well so that I could strap it in. That really just seems to be the quickest, most efficient way to do this. And without going into massive types of modifications that could take days instead of just a matter of a few hours. So we're going to start getting to that, and then we will put the first one up, and then I'll show you my way of what I chose to adjust the headlight. And obviously it's like a kind of semi-permanent solution. I'm not going to do a permanent solution because this is an $8,000 car. It's 20 years old. It's not that expensive of a car, so I'm not going to find extremely expensive solutions to things. If we were doing this on the Tesla or on the 68 Firebird, we would do something a lot more legit. But you got to go with what the car is. It's not cost effective to spend $1,000 custom machining things. So I'm gonna do what seems like it would work for everyone, and you'll get to see it when we get there. But I'm gonna start drilling here, and we will go from there. And while feeding in these zip ties, this is where I'll rant a little bit about my love-hate relationship for China garbage products. So, I love the China garbage products because it's hit or miss. Some of them are great, and they're like a third or the fourth of the price of American products sometimes. And a lot of the times the American products are actually the same China garbage because they just send them out for China to make. It's not like 10, 20 years ago where American-made parts or American companies were actually properly making things. So, I know there are some American companies out there that make amazing parts, but they're few and far between nowadays, and I'd rather just take the risk with the China garbage parts with a no questions asked eBay money-back warranty or an Amazon no question back warranty. And just try it, and if I like it, I like it. If I don't, just send it back and get a full refund. Because I would rather save the money and maybe waste a little bit of my time than spend hundreds of dollars ordering something directly from a site for it to still be crap. So I'm going to pull this plug out. You squeeze it in from the top and the bottom. You push it backwards. As I said, I'm going to leave the top ones in, but the bottom ones not need. The wire through here. And when you first put these zip ties on, always with zip ties, put them on loose, just trying to get it to hold itself really in place for now. And we're putting this headlight on. So here you go, we got the 4 holes drilled in. I like to align it, as I said before, with here, but in this case, on this side, this is in the way. So you got to mark it with a Sharpie and cut it or snap it somehow. I prefer to use the bolt cutters because I don't want to spit metal flakes all over the car, but you know, use whatever you prefer. Just be careful if you're doing it this way because this metal is very brittle. Hello. Alright, so there we go. We got the clearance that we need. So now we're going to put the zip ties in. Pay attention to the way that you put your zip ties in, because depending on how you put them in. So for me, I'm putting these sides on the top because it'll be easier to pull it tight from where we're accessing. And then on the bottom, I'm going to do it the opposite way. And when you put it into, we're just going to put the top ones in. We're going to keep them a little bit loose. And as well keep the bottom ones loose as well. Because we want to be able to adjust this. All right, so here we go. I've already spliced the wires in, and I'm gonna go over exactly what I did. So we've got the original, this blue in the screen wire is the original high beam ground and positive. And then on my car, these were already spliced. So this blue and this brown are the negative and the positive for the low beams. So what you have to do, we'll start with the high beam here. You have to clip off the connector. So the connector like this, we clipped it off. We then spliced onto the neutral a female clamp connector that can fit onto the plug of the headlights. And now on the positive side, what we had to do was we needed to make a jumper wire here. So on this end of the jumper wire, it's a connector, a female connector, just like everything else. So we could connect it to a plug. And it's about 1.5 feet long. And on the other side, this wire and the original green positive from the high beam is spliced together into a connector. So now what we do is, it doesn't matter which one you start with. You could start with the left one or the right one. On this case, we're going to start with the outside one. So I already marked on my headlights, I scuffed where the neutral one is. So this is the ground, which means the opposite of it is the high beam. So we slide the high beam on here. And then we will slide the neutral on here. Now for right now, we'll leave the jumper because this jumper is going to have to go back down and come up for the other light bulb. So now we have two cables left on here. We have the daytime running lamp and we have the low beam. So in my setup, I wanted the red lights and the low underline to always be on whenever the headlights are on. Because in this case, if the headlights are not on, I don't want it connected to the parking lights, because in this car, the headlights are only up if the high beams are on. So if you're doing this in a Camaro, for example, in the Camaro, you would want to connect the daytime running lamps to the parking lights. But in this case, the daytime running lamps are going to actually be spliced into the low beam. So let me go now and show you. This is the low beam. So these two wires were originally the low beam. As I showed you, we snipped the connector off. We put the standard plug connector on the neutral, and we could plug that into the neutral part of the headlight plug. Now on the positive side, we did just like the other side. We put a jumper in, but we actually put two jumpers in this time. So the positive to the low beam has a jumper. This red jumper is going to lead to the low beam plug on the other light. And then we needed a jumper right here with a male side connector that we could stick into the daytime running lamp plug of the headlights. So let's plug this jumper in. So there's the jumper connected. And now we will plug the, oh, I gotta go underneath all this, so. There we go. So I gotta go down and come up from the other side of the arm that goes up and down. And now I'm also gonna take the jumper from the first headlight and lead it down. So this jumper from the first headlight is for the high beam, so it will go all the way on this side. Now the neutral from the original low beam wire will go on the outside. Now the low beam positive that's connected to a jumper and the daytime running lamp here will go on the bottom. And then the jumper, the male, goes here into the daytime running lamp clip. Now, if you're paying attention, noticing, you'll see I still have some wires left. So the jumper that comes off the positive of the original low beam, the brown wire, we're going to go to this end, and on this end of it, we put another jumper into it for the daytime running lamps. So we have a female connector to plug into the headlamp, and this other jumper is a positive to go into the daytime running lamps. So that's good. Now once all this is in, now it's just a matter of, because these aren't actual plugs, they're individual connectors, we're going to go in, we're going to electrical tape around all this. But before you always do that, you want to go turn the headlights on and make sure they work. So that's what we'll do now. So there we go. We turned the headlights on, and brilliant. So we've got the low beams, where you've got the low beams and the daytime running lamps on at the same time. See, the low beams here and the daytime running lamp. And then I'll switch the high beams on. And there we go. We got full brightness from everything. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you what happens here. If we didn't connect the daytime running lamps, so this is if you didn't want the daytime running lamps to be on when the low beams are on this particular LED light, it would look like this. But you know, I don't think it looks anywhere near as cool when it doesn't have all those things on there. You could set it however you want it, but I'd prefer to have all the lights on. It kind of defeats the purpose of the Terminator light if you don't have that on there. But now we checked, the low beams work, the high beams work. Now we're going to go in there and we're going to electrical tape everything up. And then here you go. This is it finished. I wrapped it up everywhere. I'll show you on this one. I like to wrap each one individually first. And now that I have everything wrapped up, now I'm gonna put this daytime running lamp one next to it, and we will just tape everything together. Try to make it as nice and waterproof as possible. I like to go a little bit overboard with the electrical tape, especially in a situation like this where these wires hang low and there's a potential of water getting in down there. So better safe than sorry. It's only like $1 for a whole roll of electrical tape, so you might as well just go out of control overboard with it. And then if you want, you could choose to zip tie it. The original one wasn't zip tied, so I'm not going to zip tie it. But there you go. So now we got all the wires in. Now we got to put this back on, and you're going to notice now that because of where the headlights sit, I believe this also hits. Oh no, this one does not. So this one, you are just good to put right back in. So this is your 3 longer Torx screws. And this now is going to be the fun part of the adjustment, which takes freaking forever. So you got to start all these up, put them on somewhat tight, not super tight. I got to take my full charger on. As you notice, I went up to the full charger. I've been taking so much time going in and out with the videos. The battery was starting to get low. Probably best if you're so you can take your time. You don't feel rushed. Just put this on right away. I had it charging at 10 amps. I will keep the trickle on though while I'm doing the rest of this. The reason I'm taking the full charger off is because at this point we're going to have to keep opening and closing the hood as we adjust the headlight. So we don't want a big bulky battery charger in there where we can't close the hood properly. Alright, so here we go. It is a lot of just trial and error. So first shot, putting it back on. Clearly way too far over here. You gotta angle it a little bit that way. You might not notice it. So the top panel has the elongated lines this way, for the slots, but the bottom one has it this way, so you can truly slide it in absolutely any direction, which is what makes it a little bit difficult when trying to adjust this. Still needs to go further that way. And that finally gave way. It moved far, so I probably went too far with it. Alright, so it's good on this side. I just got to take this side and move it up a little bit. I think we might be good here. Yep. So those 3 screws, they do the angle, just this way in 2D, up, down, left, right of where the plate is. Now there's also 4 plastic tabs on here as well, and what this does is this adjusts the height, so you can make sure that your headlamp is either so that it's at the height of the hood in the front, and that when it's closed it's just above the bumper level. That should not have changed, but you never know when you're working on things what could possibly change, but no, it appears that it is still good. Now this side went down a little bit, so I'll actually probably lift that side up a little. Alright, so we're good now. Now you got to go back to the Phillips too, because, hey, why not just change bolts around all the time back and forth? And there it is. Pull the plastic off now. Now, if you're a keen observer, you will notice I did not put the bezel back on. And that's because you can't anymore. Because these bulbs are so much larger, it just will not fit. So that is a little bit that you will have to sacrifice, that when it's open, there is a little bit of a hole. If you're a creative person, you could probably find a way to cut and drill this to all holy hell. But I'm not willing to do that and take the time. So this is fine with me. It's dark when the headlights are up, so no one's really going to see this. So there you go. There you have it. We might come back and show the video of the adjustments, or I might just make a little piece at the end telling you how the adjustments went. But there you go. That's the headlights. That's the low beams. This is the high beams. And then there's the fog lights. Once again, thanks for watching the Tesla Hobo channel. I'm the Tesla Hobo. If you want to watch more videos of us doing performance upgrades and repairs to this car, as well as race this car and Teslas and Lamborghinis and Beamers at the drag strip, click subscribe. We got lots of things to do to this car. We're going to be putting straight pipe on, because right now you can only hear the engine from the engine and not from the exhaust, so it sounds a little weird. So we got that next, and we'll probably lower it.